Welcome to The Deep Dive. We're the podcast that plunges into fascinating topics so you get the insights you really need. Today, we are tackling a giant, Charles Dickens. His name just instantly brings to mind these incredibly vivid characters, doesn't it? And that sharp social critique, plus stories like A Christmas Carol, Great Expectations, Oliver Twist. I mean, they're more than just books.
They really are. They're part of our cultural furniture almost.
Exactly. So our mission today is to explore the man behind all that. Not just Dickens, the famous author, but, the reformer, the complex guy, maybe even the flawed person behind the legend. We want to look at what shaped his writing, how his own life, which was pretty turbulent, wasn't it? How that seeped into his work.
Oh, definitely.
And why, all this time later, his voice still feels so relevant. So we all kind of know the stories, but the man himself, where should we start digging into Charles Dickens?
Well, I think the key thing, maybe the most staggering thing, is how he used his own pretty deep childhood trauma. He didn't just write about injustice. He almost weaponized his own experiences.
Weaponized, that's a strong word.
Yeah, I think so. Because that humiliation, his father being in debtor's prison, it fueled this relentless drive for social change in his writing. He was born 1812, Portsmouth, middle-class family initially.
Right.
But then things went wrong. Financial ruin, father locked up for debt, which is just horribly common then.
Devastating for a child.
Totally. And it meant young Charles was forced into this horrible, grueling factory work, blacking factory, wasn't it?
Yeah, polishing shoes, I think.
That experience, it scarred him deeply. And you see that suffering echo again and again in his novels. It's this haunting theme.
It's kind of amazing, though, when you think he had so little formal education. How did he become this literary powerhouse? He really was self-made, wasn't he? Taught himself shorthand, worked as a journalist.
Clawed his way up.
Yeah.
But he wasn't just a hard worker. He was complicated, full of contradictions.
How so?
Incredibly charismatic. People were drawn to him. Generous, too. But then also quite domineering, apparently. Emotionally distant, even with his own family.
You wonder if that intensity, that complexity, was part of his creative genius. Or maybe just made his personal life difficult?
I suspect both, honestly. I mean, look at his marriage to Catherine Hogarth. 10 children together.
10.
And then this really painful, very public separation. And part of that was his infatuation with Ellen Ternan, the actress.
Right, that caused quite the scandal.
It did. But despite all that personal turmoil, his energy was just boundless. Absolutely relentless. He wasn't just writing novels.
No, he was editing magazines.
Performing those public readings to huge crowds.
They were incredibly popular, weren't they? Like rock concerts.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And campaigning for social reforms, it was nonstop. This incredible drive, you feel it must have come from somewhere deep. Maybe that insecurity from his childhood, that punishing work ethic.
Yeah.
Like he was constantly running from the ghost of poverty.
And you definitely feel that drive in the writing itself. The prose is so, Dickensian. You know it when you read it.
Instantly recognizable.
So rich, so detailed. Loads of humor, loads of sentimentality sometimes.
But always with that sharp edge, right? That social commentary cutting through.
Exactly. It's never just sentimental fluff. And the way he published them, that really shaped the style too, didn't it?
Oh, massively. The serial publication, most of his big novels came out first in monthly or weekly parts.
So he basically had to invent the cliffhanger centuries before TV box sets.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
He had to keep people desperate for the next installment, which is why you get these sprawling, sometimes convoluted plots. Got to keep them hooked.
And he was a master at controlling the viewpoint, wasn't he? How we see the world in his stories.
Yeah, he played with perspective brilliantly. Sometimes he's like this all-seeing narrator, the omniscient view, showing you the whole sweep of Victorian society, high and low.
Right, painting the big picture.
But then, boom, you can zoom right in. Put you directly inside a character's head. Like in David Copperfield, you get that really intimate first-person perspective.
And the settings, especially London. He makes London feel like a character itself.
Oh, absolutely. The fog, the grime, the crowds, the sheer energy of the place. It's so immersive. You feel like you're right there walking those streets with Pip or Oliver.
Which brings us to the heart of it, really. His novels are so deeply tangled up with the time he lived in. Victorian England.
Yeah, this period of just massive change. Industrial revolution roaring, cities exploding, huge social shifts. chaos, really.
And Dickens didn't just reflect it, did he? He actively used his fiction to attack the problems he saw.
He really did. It was a platform, maybe even a weapon, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
He shone this glaring light on the horrors of the workhouses, think Oliver Twist.
Chilling.
The absolute nightmare of the legal system in Bleak House, the cruelty of child labor in David Copperfield, and debtors' prisons, which he knew firsthand. He exposed it all.
He wasn't just pointing fingers, though. He was actually arguing for change.
Precisely. He wasn't just an observer. He was an advocate. He poured his outrage into his stories to show why reform was desperately needed. Changes to the poor laws, for example.
Those were notoriously harsh, weren't they? The workhouse system.
Terrible. Separating families, awful conditions. He pushed for better education, too, and workers' rights. His stories weren't just entertainment. They genuinely fueled public debate. They contributed to actual gradual changes in society.
So the big themes running through everything are things like social inequality.
Definitely. The impact of industrialization, the struggle of the poor, but also, the complexities of human nature itself, the importance of compassion.
And morality, redemption.
Yes. His characters were often wrestling with ethical choices, trying to grow. A Christmas Carol's the classic example, isn't it? Scrooge's transformation is all about redemption.
Speaking of characters, that's maybe his greatest superpower, creating these unforgettable people.
Absolutely. Utterly masterful, heroes, villains, everything in between. They feel so alive, so multidimensional.
Even though they can be quite exaggerated sometimes.
Yeah, they're often larger than life, but that's what makes them stick in your mind. Think of Scrooge, obviously.
Yeah.
Or Miss Havisham in her decaying wedding dress. Totally. Little Nell from the Old Curiosity Shop. Pip, Fagin, and Oliver Twist.
Yeah.
They're iconic.
So what's the secret? How did he make them so vivid?
Well, I think it's partly because they weren't just individuals. They often stand for something bigger. They embody the social issues he's tackling.
Ah, so they're like representatives of their time.
Exactly. They make these abstract problems, poverty, corruption, injustice, feel real and human. You connect with the people suffering or the ones causing the suffering. It forces you, the reader, to think about your own society, your own responsibilities.
It's interesting, though, despite being hugely popular with the public.
Adored, really.
He got mixed reviews from the critics, didn't he? Both then and later.
Yeah, that's true. Some found him melodramatic. Virginia Woolf famously dismissed some of his work. Others said he sentimentalized poverty or his characters were just caricatures.
But maybe his real genius was that accessibility. He wasn't writing for some elite literary circle.
No, he wrote for everyone. From the factory worker who bought the weekly installments to Queen Victoria herself. That serial format really democratized reading in a way, made literature available to so many more people.
Though we should acknowledge there are modern criticisms too, right? About some of his portrayals.
Yes, definitely. And it's important to talk about that. The portrayal of Fagin in Oliver Twist is often cited as anti-Semitic stereotyping. And his female characters, they often fall into rather limited roles, either angelic or grotesque.
So not without flaws.
No writer is. But his overall impact is just undeniable. He forced Victorian England to look at itself, its ugliness and its inequalities. And his writing genuinely influenced reforms.
And his characters and plot devices have become part of the literary toolkit now, haven't they?
Oh, absolutely. The orphan protagonists finding their way, the corrupt institution, the sudden revelation about parentage. These are Dickensian tropes that countless writers have used since.
You see his influence everywhere.
You do. Dostoevsky admired his psychological depth. Kafka's bureaucratic nightmares seem to echo things in Dickens. Even contemporary authors like Zadie Smith talk about his skill in weaving together a whole social world.
And the themes just keep resonating, don't they? Social justice, compassion, integrity.
They're timeless, which is why we keep seeing adaptations, films, TV series, stage plays, especially A Christmas Carol. Every year, it reinforces that message of hope and redemption.
Okay, maybe we should zoom in on one specific book to really get a handle on his craft. What about Great Expectations? Why is that one considered such a masterpiece?
Great Expectations. It's just such a powerful, complex book about ambition and disillusionment, really.
Pip's journey.
Exactly. Like Pip's journey from being a poor orphan apprentice to a blacksmith to becoming a gentleman. But it's a searing critique of the whole class system.
Because his expectations aren't what they seem.
Right. They come from Magwitch, the convict he helped as a boy. Not from some wealthy benefactor like Miss Havisham, as he assumes. It totally exposes the hypocrisy and the arbitrary nature of wealth and status. It kind of pulls apart that whole self-made man idea.
And it's got such atmosphere, too. Really dark, gothic elements.
Oh, yeah. There's Havisham's house, Satis house, frozen in time with the decaying wedding feast. It's incredibly atmospheric, but it's also psychologically deep. Pip's shame about his background, about Joe, his kind brother-in-law.
That's so painful to read.
It really is. It shows Dickens' writing with incredible nuance. And there's that fascinating story about the ending, isn't there?
Oh, right, he changed it.
Yeah, the original ending was much bleaker. Pip and Estella meet years later, acknowledge the past, but basically part ways forever. Quite realistic, maybe.
But that's not the ending we usually read.
No. His friend and editor persuaded him to write a more hopeful, or at least more ambiguous ending, where Pip sees no shadow of another parting from her. Apparently, the public wanted something less downbeat.
Wow, that really shows the pressure he was under, balancing his own artistic vision with what his audience wanted.
Exactly. That tension between realism and popularity runs through a lot of his career.
So summing up Charles Dickens, he was much more than just a novelist, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely. A force of nature, really. A social commentator, a performer, a reformer, a mirror reflecting his age, warts and all.
And someone who managed to turn his own pain, his own struggles into these incredibly powerful stories that actually made a difference.
That's the amazing thing. He didn't just entertain. He aimed to change the world he saw. And in many ways, he did.
So perhaps a final thought for you listening. Next time you pick up a Dickens novel, maybe A Tale of Two Cities, or you see Tiny Tim in yet another Christmas Carol adaptation, think about how Dickens' own life, those raw experiences from his youth, are woven right into the story. And consider this, his call for empathy, for social justice. Does it still challenge us today? How does it make us look at our own world?